Well, good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Eddie Morris. I am the Elevator Program Manager with the University of Virginia and the President of Elevator U. Thank you for joining us today for an Elevator U webinar. We've had one in February, March, April. Here we are in May. There will also be one coming in June. So we're going to have, today we've got Bobby Haskett with Fabicab with us. He will be presenting on, the title is Understanding and Minimizing Risks Associated with Cab Interior Work. Before we get started, for anyone who does have questions, there is at the bottom, if you're familiar with Zoom, at the bottom of the Zoom window is a chat. You can click on that chat button. You can type a question in there. Brad will be monitoring the questions as we go along, and maybe along the way or at the end, depending on how Bobby wants to do it or Brad wants to do it, we will ask those questions. So yeah, if you have any questions, just put it into the chat. We will see them and we will get to them. And we expect this presentation to be anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll add on some questions. And it looks to be like a great presentation. And with that said, I will roll it over to Bobby.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this morning. We'll go ahead and share my screen here. Today, I'm going to be talking about, as Eddie said, understanding and minimizing risk associated with the cab interior work. And some of the things I'm going to point out are going to be some of the most common problems that we see and the feedback that we get from the field and the mechanics out there. So without further ado, I'm going to get into this. The outline for today is I'm going to talk a little bit about the different cab shells, canopies, and the existing conditions found in your existing cabs, and what steps that you can take to ensure that you're properly ordering and installing the new cab interiors, common installation issues and how to deal with them, and understanding the different types of materials and how they're going to affect the longevity of that interior itself. The first thing I want to talk about is cab shell construction. Very, very important. And I think this is something that gets missed quite often. The first thing I will say is I strongly encourage everyone that is looking to replace their elevator interior to make sure that you have someone put their eyes on the type of cab shell that you're dealing with. The best way that we have found to do this is to have the mechanic or a superintendent be able to pop the doors and get on top of the canopy and actually look over the side of the elevator to be able to see the true cab construction. The most common that you're going to find out there is going to be your wood shell, a metal shell, and then a skeleton cab. And I've got a couple pictures up here on the screen of the skeleton cab. And this is probably the one that I see causes the biggest problem. And a couple reasons for that. The first reason is it wasn't checked in the beginning of the ordering process. But if you order a vertical system, very few times is it going to work in a skeleton type cab like you see here. On the left here, you will see where my cursor is. This is a great example of a skeleton cab. You're going to find a lot of these in your Otis cabs, your older Dovers, your Montgomerys. They're basically we call them skeleton cabs. They're also referred to as a stick frame cab. And it's literally the best way to think about it is when you pull the actual laminate panel off the wall, you could stick your hand right through to the hoistway. And you're always better off if you do find during your pre-inspection of the cab shell, if you find that it is a skeleton cab, what we recommend and have found the best way to have zero problems on your installation is to run a horizontal system. And I gave an example here to the right to show that these are panels that are going to span the entire wall that will allow you to have connection points in these framed wall here, as you see on the left, and allows you to attach to those without having to go to a fabrication shop or anything like that to be able to fill those voids. Now, I do recommend you running, if you're ordering an interior and it's a horizontal system, I would make sure that the product that you're ordering has an interlocking clip that's going to allow the face of the panel to be able to stay in an even plane all the way up in a skeleton cab, because a lot of times you'll get some waviness in those stick frames, if you will. They're a little bit loose, if you will. So you want something that interlocks with one another on that. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be canopies. This is something that kind of gets ignored a lot of times. And I just want to pull a couple pictures here to show you the different types of canopies and dog houses that you run into sometimes. The one here on the left is going to be what I would consider your typical dog house. You're going to find these in typically a service elevator, or, you know, even in an apartment building, a dorm that's going to allow someone to be able to move large furniture up and down throughout the floors. What you really want to see is a lot of times we find that there are ceilings already in the cab that have brackets that have come clear up to the doghouse, and they've kind of eliminated the doghouse. So we always recommend make sure you're looking at that once again, popping the doors and getting on top of the canopy to really see what's there. Because a lot of existing cabs have an island ceiling, and it's very hard to see the conditions above the ceiling unless you're getting on top of the cab. The right-hand picture as well, you will see that not only does this have a doghouse, but it's got a step out right before the doghouse. And this can be missed quite often when you're surveying the cab, because a lot of times they will pull the measurement up to the doghouse. So they'll pull a measurement up to here and just say that is the height of the canopy all the way across. And by the time the panels get made and everything, and when you get on site and the mechanics tear that down, what's going to end up happening is you're going to be short on this back wall. So I encourage you, always get on top of the canopy and make sure you're looking at all conditions on the canopy. And a lot of times they will run a 2-inch perimeter from the ceiling to the cab shell wall. That gives you an idea that I usually like to take a flashlight, look up between that gap, and a lot of times you can see this this raised up inside of there. Next thing we're going to talk about is coves. Coves is quite a big deal, and we find, other than skeleton cabs, coves is probably the next thing that is missed, because a lot of sales folks and superintendents believe that they can remove those coves. What we have found is about 90% of the time, you are not going to be able to remove those coves. So you're going to have to build around them. Now, what we recommend is if you do run into a cab that has coves like this, is to grab a scrap piece of paper and sketch out these different measurements. The measurement from underneath the cove to the floor, how far the drop is from the cove from the ceiling. And a lot of times we can design that ceiling to set right inside those coves and give a nice clean look without ever having to cut out or remove those coves themselves. And I do want to elaborate here a little bit. What we consider a cove is not always what a light sets in. A good rule of thumb that you need to think of is a cove is anything that protrudes out of any part of the cab shell wall. So a lot of times you can go up and you may have a 1-inch offset at the top with a 6-inch band around the top. I would still consider that a cove, and that needs photo documented and measured as well. Because what ends up happening is they give you, we find this is we get surveys in a lot of time, and all they do is they just take a measurement from the canopy to the actual floor of the cab. And what ends up happening is they forget to tell you there's a cove there. So when we do the approval drawings, if no one catches it on the approval process, and a lot of times what I want to explain to everybody that I think is missed many times is a lot of times the person that takes the original surveys is not always the person that does the field verification of the blueprints. No matter who you're ordering your interior through, that gets missed. There's some miscommunication there. So I always recommend pictures, and we're getting ready to go over a checklist of what we recommend to make sure to avoid any of those problems. But you want to call out your coves no matter what. If you see any obstruction off the plane of any of your cab shell walls, that needs to be noted, so we're not making panels that in essence go above this cove and they need to be cut down once you get them on site, and it just causes the job to take at that point. Pre-planning steps to ensure proper ordering and installation of the new interior. This is a card that we put together about 4 years ago, and I have some very helpful documents like this that I'm going to be able to share with anybody attending today. We're going to give my contact information, and I'm happy to send you one of these in the mail or give you the PDF copy. But I do want to take time and go over these steps because it's very, very important. And we believe that if you follow these steps, you know, it will ensure a successful installation no matter what interior you're buying. And the number one thing is take pictures, folks. If you take at least a minimum of 3 pictures while you're on site, I like doing an overview of the cab, take a picture of your base condition, which is otherwise known as a toe kick at the bottom, and then a picture between the ceiling, highlighting that area that I told you about, that 2-inch the 2-inch gap that goes around that ceiling. Get a picture up there, because a lot of times when we get these in, we'll be able to spot a cove up there and be able to head off a problem before it happens. Using survey sheets. Always take survey sheets with you, and follow the instructions from the cab vendor that you're using. And be as accurate as possible on your measurements. Clear down to a 1/16 of an inch. That can be very, very important, especially when we're dealing with cabs that have coves or cabs that have dog houses. Very important. Number 3 is identifying obstructions. You want to look for any noticeable obstruction in the cab shell wall, kind of like we spoke about, that is taking place from the floor to the ceiling. Pardon me. And an obstruction is any offset, and it can be as small as, like I said, 1/8 of an inch, but it can have a major implication on the engineering design. So you want to take a picture, whether you believe it's an obstruction or not. I can promise you the cab vendor that you're working with will really appreciate you doing that and showing them that, hey, is this an issue? I seen it. A lot of times you all see like a transom on the inside of the cab. It jots out a little bit. If you see that, go ahead and take a quick picture of that. Take a little measurement there and let them know that, hey, I don't know if this is going to be a problem, but this is something I've seen. And pictures speak 1,000 words. Number 4, inspect your canopy. Now, make sure that you're checking your canopy. That we want to make sure it has a flush surface or includes an offset, like a hat channel or a doghouse. acknowledging these offsets will help us understand what type of sealing system is going to be best for the cab that you're using. Your customer, your end user customer, very well might want an island sealing. But because of the way the doghouse is or the obstructions on the canopy, maybe a true island sealing is not going to be, the best fit for that cab, for installation, and for your customer moving things in and out of there. Identify your type of cab shell. You're going to be able to do that again from getting on top of the canopy and looking over the side. Now, typical cab shells, like we spoke about, are going to be made of metal, wood, or you're going to have a skeleton cab. As we spoke about, the skeleton cabs can affect the ease of installation for a new cab interior. This knowledge will enable us to, recommend the appropriate design for you to alleviate any install issues. A good indication, very important, a good indication that your cab might be a skeleton cab, or there are large rivets in the base and at the top where your freeze is by the canopy. And they're about a quarter size. You can't miss them. They're going to be painted the same color as the cab, but they are literally about the size of a quarter, and they're rivets on the bottom. Once again, if you missed the cab shell and maybe you didn't have the ability to pop the doors and get on top, if you're giving me that overview picture, we always blow that up to be able to look and see if we see any of those rivets that we can alert you to that, hey, you might want to send a mechanic out there. Let's make sure this is not a skeleton cab. Review the corners of your cab. Typically the cab shells are made of metal, wood, but you want to see if the corners are square or if they're rounded. A lot of the older cabs in the 50s, 60s, and some in the 70s, as part of their construction, they have what's called a bull nose or a curved reveal. Very, very important to take a picture of that, because we're going to need to know what that offset is to be able to align your panels to be aesthetically pleasing to the end user customer. Review the flooring. A lot of times, most elevator companies are not going to do flooring. Some do, but the majority we see that do not. We always, recommend that if they're not replacing the flooring, make sure and take a picture of the existing one, just in case we see a problem. They can include, uneven surfaces, extrusions that may interfere with the interior itself. A lot of people ask us, hey, do you recommend us putting in the flooring before or after the interior goes in? What we like to recommend is put your interior in after the new flooring is placed. The biggest reason for that is no matter what interior vendor that you're going to use, you don't want to entrap that toe kick or that base with putting flooring over it. That could cause a problem 15 years down the road when they want to replace their interior. Review the existing wall panels that are up there. And you really want to take a really good look and are the wall panels flush to the cab shell wall? Or do they have an offset or a bracket behind the existing panel? That can tell you a lot. A lot of times, if they're flush, many times that could be an indication that, wow, this might be a skeleton cab. Let's take a little bit of a closer look. A good way to be able to tell that is just walk up next to the panel that's existing on there, take a quick screenshot or a quick picture of that, I should say, and include that in your email when you're sending it to your cabinet. Reviewing the base. There's a lot of different bases out there. Some of them extend out from the cab shell. Some of them are inset into the cab shell. Very, very important, because if the cab, has a base that the customer would like to retain, no matter who the cab vendor is, they are going to want to know what's the size of that, how far does it stick out, and what's the height of it as well. And that'll help us in our engineering design and so forth. Obtain, model information. If you can, I always tell everybody, hey, just take a picture where the COP is a lot of times you got your Dover badge, but over the years, we have been able, if, we've caught a couple things that when we see a certain old Montgomery or something, we're like, there's an obstruction on top of the canopy. You'll want to check this during field verification of your drawings. So this is what we call, like I said, our top 10 card. And we'll be able to share that, later on with everyone. We're going to talk about evaluating your pre-existing damage. Before you replace the interior, very, very important here. What I always recommend for all of our customers is take a look at the damage that's in there currently. A great example is if you see that the bottom is getting chipped up and damaged quite a bit, like this picture right here, they're probably bringing carts in and out. Well, really, the last thing you want to do is put another laminate cab in there if you're getting excessive damage on the bottom part of those panels. So a good example in this example would be utilizing a stainless steel pattern material, kind of like a 5WL, a 5SM. There are many, many different textured patterns that you can use that does a fantastic job of actually hiding that damage. It's still going to get scratched up, but with that embossment, it's going to do a really great job of hiding those scratches and so forth. We're really big on always utilizing a horizontal panel system. It can really make the replacement process of your damaged panels much more cost efficient than if you're running a vertical system. I can tell you all now that if you're not sure of the cab construction, if you have a lot of questions or the cab is very questionable, I can tell you that no matter what cab vendor you're going to purchase your interior, I would always recommend your horizontal system is going to be your safest system that you can use. It's going to be much more forgiving, whether you're dealing with a damaged cab shell or anything like that, but also about the replacement cost for your customer. It's going to be a lot more friendly to the customer price-wise if and when they do need to do a replacement of some panels. Always look very carefully at the damage. A lot of people just hear that, hey, I want a new interior. They want to go in, they want to hand a catalog to the customer and say, hey, pick out something. I think there's a lot of value when you're identifying what kind of damage has been done inside that cab, and pointing that out to your end user customer really makes it look like you have, obviously their best interest in mind. And we all want to make sure that we're suggesting something that is going to be the best fit for our customer. Common installation issues and how to deal with them. This is a good picture of a freight cab shell that's after it's been stripped, and you could tell a fork truck has been running into it and everything else. The problem, you're going to run into dented and damaged metal cab shells a lot. This will not allow the panels to have a true and flat elevation plane. That's really important. The last thing you want to do is be screwing panels to a wall that is dented out, and there's offsets of anything that could be as little as 1/4 of an inch, and I've seen them as deep as 1.5 inches on a dent. The solution that you're going to have is you're either going to have to shim it out, or utilize a interior system that has interlocking brackets. If you use a system that has interlocking brackets, it will always ensure that the entire elevation plane will stay true and level. So your panels will not go up, jog out, go up, jog back in, and go up. Because once again, when you're using a horizontal system, you have multiple attachment points. So a lot of times, think of the thickness of a fork truck fork, okay, the width of it. Most of the time, let's call them 6 inches wide. Well, they're going to hit that and dent that, and the dent is 6 inches wide and maybe an inch deep. Well, the good thing is if you're utilizing a horizontal system, a system that's going left to right instead of up and down, the attachment point can be skipped in that small area that goes in, that is dented, if you will. And that will save you a ton of time shimming something out or, attaching. And we've seen it, at least, like in our system, we've seen where you can skip an area that is up to 2 feet wide that's dented in real bad, because you have like 40 different attachment points along that entire bracket. So it can really, really help you once you tear that down and you see it. I know we send shims with our systems, and I know a lot of other interior companies do as well. Make sure and utilize them when you're doing your installations. I want to talk a little bit about, understanding the different materials and how they're going to affect the longevity of the interior that you're actually selling your customer. These are just a couple pictures I pulled out. And, with some of the materials used in the elevator cabs, the left picture is going to be that example of the pattern stainless steel material that we talked about, or just pattern material. It can still give the elevator a really nice modern look. But I'll tell you, it is very, very durable product. It hides scratches, it hides vandalism. Many, many times I've seen where people have keyed in profanity in an elevator, and if they've done it over textured material, it's even very, very hard to even be able to read what the words that they're writing are. Whether that is in malls, colleges, apartment complexes, it's always good to utilize that when you can. And then the right picture, of course, is going to show your basic laminates that's commonly used to give you that higher end look. We always recommend staying away from veneer in an area that has a lot of high traffic. Veneer is very soft. You can even dent veneer with your fingernail. So I always try to let everybody know to, stay away from that. Wilson Art has a really good product in their laminate selection. It's called a Aeon finish, AEON. I recommend everybody kind of look into that. It's very, very durable. It's 3 times more scuff resistant, 5 times more scratch resistant than most of the other laminates out there. We prefer to use an Aeon finish. We try to drive our customers to that. And the best way that I try to educate people that don't know laminates real well, it's very much like a 1960s hot rod that has a lacquer paint job versus the new paint jobs that are base coat, clear coat. They put an extra coating of protection on the outside of that. But I want to make sure that everybody today that is here and listening to me, that I want you to always look at the cab shell and everything. But so many times we see customers that give us a call and they say, hey, we have real bad damage in this cab. It gets beat up. They have carts in and out of it, but they want another laminate interior, all laminate. And we try to explain to them that, it's advantageous for the end user customer to look and be offered some different materials that can be used at least from the handrail panel down, that can give them a better looking cab, for the longevity of the cab versus they asking for a laminate cab and you just giving it to them and it's going to be damaged in 2 months after you put it in. I personally feel that it's okay to question your end user customer's selection. We do that a lot. When a customer selects something and we don't feel like it's going to be very conducive in the environment that their elevator currently is in, we go ahead and challenge them on it. We let them know the negatives of staying with laminate. And we feel like that if we do our due diligence of doing that up front and they still want a laminate cab, when that is installed and there is damage, at least all of us on here, has made an effort to point out what we as experts recommend, the material recommended for the bottom of that. I went ahead, this is my last slide on this, and I think we're right on time. This is my contact information. If anybody would like to take this down, feel free to shoot me an email. We have a lot of surveys that have to do with the cove, the actual doghouse canopy. We have a lot of tools, including that top 10 card. I'd love to send you guys, whoever would like it, a batch of PDFs that will just help you no matter whose interior you're using. We've made some really great tools that I'd be more than happy to send out to everybody. And if anybody, I know I'm getting ready to turn it back over to Brad to ask some of those questions, but if anybody at all has any additional questions, maybe after we get off this Zoom today, we will be at the NAEC in Louisville, and feel free, stop by the booth. We're going to be there, our team. We'd love to sit and talk with you and be able to help you in any situation. Brad?
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. Right now, we just have one question. So anyone, feel free to go ahead and shoot us some questions here. What information do you suggest be gathered to ensure that the increase or decrease dead weight does not exceed the 5% allowed by code?
Yep, great question. What I would do is take, once again, if you follow the top 10 card, we're going to be able to get a really good feel, or whoever the cab vendor is, but you're going to need to look at the thickness of the panel. So go ahead and take a measurement of the thickness of panel that's in there. You're going to find two most common sizes. One of those are going to be a 1/2 inch thick, and another is going to be 3/4. Always take a picture of that. The biggest problem we see about that 5% total weight problem is when you have an all wood cab that's laminate that you're wanting to put a system on top of it without taking out anything. So I would always say take pictures, take thicknesses of your panels that are existing in there, in the materials. And a lot of times, at least, and I'm sure many cab vendors do this, we have the ability to take that information of the thickness of panels that's in there and kind of be able to know what kind of weight we're looking at. And then you'll see that on most approval drawings, and even if it's not a job yet and you're concerned about that, give your cab vendor a call. Most everybody has basically a spreadsheet that we can type that in. It's a 2,500 pound car, 51 by 80 by 96. It's got 3/4 inch panels in it. We know how much weight, give or take, is in there right now, and we can share that with you as well.
All right. So right now, that's the only question we have. Is there anything else that you wanted to expand on? Maybe you did get a chance to.
Yeah, the one thing I would recommend that I want to maybe just touch base a little bit more is that I would really encourage anybody on here that's going to do any kind of cab modifications or do new cabs. I can't push enough. Get a copy of this top 10 card. Really, like I said, I'm happy to mail you one. I'm happy to send you our PDF of it, but we share this with all of our customers. even if we have a lot of our even if they're ordering a competition, you know, a competitor's cab interior, I can't tell you enough that if you use if you follow these 10 steps, I can tell you that your chances of having problems, you have minimized, you know, dramatically. So that's really what I want to push more than anything. And I guess lastly, Brad, what I would like to say is if anyone at any time has any questions, you know, on an interior, even if it's not one of ours, I mean it. Our name and numbers here. I want you to give us a call. We'd be more than happy to help you figure out a problem if you see it before, you know, even if you've already ordered the interior and you got it there and there's a problem, please reach out. I think that is maybe one of the top things that we see is not a lot of people want to admit that they don't really know what they're looking at in there. And we encourage, take pictures, send us an email. We're happy to talk with you about it.
We have a couple more that came in here. Matthew is like, what height do you recommend that handrails be put at for accessibility?
Yes, most, and it's going to be, you know, your code's going to vary per region. I know that everybody knows that, but most of them is 32 inches, okay, at finished floor. And I want to elaborate a little bit more on that, Brad, because a lot of people want to use bumpers, and I want to talk about that real quick. A lot of people want to use bumpers, but here's the problem. Hospital cabs, they request bumpers because they want to leave a laminate wall, but they want to put a bumper up to be able to protect the wall. Well, what we find is many times there's 2 or 3 different hospital type beds in the facility. And believe it or not, they all have a different height in them. You know, so a 6-inch bumper might work for bed 1 and 2, but it's not protecting anything on bed 3. So I kind of always like to throw that in when we talk about handrail height. Your handrail height's always going to be at a fixed level. And, you know, so anytime you're looking at that for protection, also look at bumpers for protection as well.
Okay, and then Glenn asked, how are you determining if it exceeds safety plank rating?
I need him to elaborate on that.
All right.
Yeah.
Eddie,
I'm
did
not
you have
familiar
something?
with.
Yeah, so while Glenn may be elaborating on that, in your years of experience, Bobby, do you have or know of the best way to have the panels mounted in a car? I've seen them screwed on, hung on,
Yeah.
different ways. What do you think is the, I guess, the most reliable?
I believe the most reliable is your interlocking attachment, okay, which is going to be one of 2 things. It's either going to be a monarch clip. Those are also referred to in the industry as C clips. But what I like is the interlocking clips on horizontal panel systems. There's a few of us out here in the industry that do that. I always recommend going with a company that has interlocking clips because there's a couple things that's going to save you from. And I elaborated a little bit on that, but I want to touch back on that is when you have a bad dented shell and everything, if you're using a aluminum clip that interlocks with the panel below it that allows you to screw to the wall, it is much more forgiving, Eddie, than you know, using just a panel and screwing the panel right to the wall. And we've seen that very many times before.
Glenn was saying in relationship to engineered design of safeties versus car weight and addition of weight. I don't know if that clarifies.
Yeah, so basically, I guess I think I know where he's at on that is what we do is most of the people, most of the technicians, when they pull out, they're going to weigh all their interior that comes out. If we didn't get that information up front of the thickness of the panel, you know, that's in there, like we talked about earlier, they'll weigh that And then our approval drawings, and I know a lot of the other interior companies, they'll put the weights on the approval drawing. I always recommend throw that up to your superintendent to make sure that they're verifying that that's going to work in there. A lot of times those get missed. They don't find that problem with weight until they get it on site. And of course, that's too late at that time. So I would recommend that anybody that is looking or measuring the elevator for a quote, if you will, is go ahead and utilize that top 10 card. Make sure you're looking at the panels and taking those measurements so we can run those numbers to make sure to give you an accurate, hey, you're going to be pulling out 380 pounds. You're going to be putting back 410. That's where you're at. And I think a lot of times that's what gets missed because it doesn't hit the superintendent's desk until it's already been ordered.
Okay, it looks like you answered his question there.
Okay.
It looks like all of the questions that we have. Eddie, do you have anything to add?
So no, I don't have anything to add. Bobby, it's been a fantastic presentation. As Bobby has said earlier, for those who may be going to NAEC out in Louisville, Kentucky in September, he'll have a booth there. You can more than welcome go visit him, get some more great information, have a little bit longer to talk to him too. And nothing like meeting in person. But Bobby still has his information here. If you need to reach out to him, please do so. Other than that,
Eddie, I just want to let people know that we will have this on demand on our YouTube page and then also on the elevatoru.org page. So you can review this video later as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I appreciate you reminding me of that. And we appreciate everybody showing up, and hope you all have a great day and a safe day. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all. And we'll have all those documents that I'm talking about. We'll have them at our booth as well. So if you don't get a chance to email me before the NAEC, know that we'll have a stack of top 10 cards that we'll hand out if you come by and see me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Bobby, for doing it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day, folks.
All right, bye-bye.